Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's been a while since I have been able to put together a video. Those of you that have kind of been following my work may know that for a while I was putting together a weekly video message along with my podcast, along with writing that I was doing, along with my several jobs that I work. And it just got to be where it was too much to keep up with doing it on a weekly basis. And so I kind of letting the weekly video messages go to the wayside, just in the making a time commitment on things and looking at where my time was best spent. I had also kind of started to fall away a little bit from some of the groups that I had been involved with and aligned with related to issues on education. When I got involved with, I guess if you want to call it activism, it really kind of started off as just, me on a mission to try to produce content that I could distribute to parents and really trying to raise awareness of what the situation looked like inside of schools and trying to tell my story as a former educator in public schools and really just again to try to educate parents, because I think that there is this, and I talk a lot about this in my book that I wrote, this sense of, because most parents, if not, a majority of parents went through public school, not all, but a lot did, then therefore they know, right? Well, when I went through school, this is what it was like, and it must still be that way today. And in many cases, that probably is true, but there are things that have changed, events and the way that we do things, cycles and different methods that are used. And, it's obviously a different time as well, that we can't know for certain what it's like to be a student today, because we aren't one ourselves. And so just the observations of being a teacher and trying to bring those to the forefront and really my own, again, personal opinion based off of research that I've done and my experiences to say that this way that we are trying to educate children isn't working. And it was actually the way that it was set up was never going to work, and I know that there's always this debate about is school broken? Is the education system broken? That kind of thing. And so, again, my quest was really just to raise awareness and to get parents to become more engaged and aware of what was going on, mostly from a curriculum standpoint. That was really my number one focus, had been on curriculum. How are we picking and choosing what we're teaching, how we attempt to try to teach it, who's teaching it. I've spent a lot of time talking about, the lack of preparedness that many educators have upon entering into schools, that really our teacher training colleges do a horrible job at preparing our educators. Most have very little or minimal knowledge in the area that they're teaching, and so on and so forth. So that was kind of one thing. The other thing was then kind of what I call like the auxiliary things that go along with being in a building, in a school building, right? Being, like I kind of try to describe, locked up in a classroom, 8 hours a day, 180 days a year, 12 years out of your life. And what do you get out of that when you are done, right? And so, and even probably more accurately, what is the impact of that? Not necessarily even what you get out of it. What's the impact of that on you as a learner? And so that's really kind of was my focus. And then, of course, once the pandemic hit, it seemed like parental engagement went through the roof. And it was really kind of through that lens, that crack in the door, so to speak, that parents started looking in, obviously, at a lot of the policies that schools were putting into place as it related to the unfolding of the pandemic. And then right alongside with that, parallel to it, then it seemed like almost instantaneously there was this rise of social emotional learning and then critical race theory, And then you kind of had that concoction of those three items that were really fueling a lot of parental engagement. And so I don't want to get too far off into the weeds here with this, because there has been this very weird dynamic of the rise of parental engagement in education. Obviously, we've seen that play out through attending school board meetings, more open communication with administration and teachers in the building, asking questions, probing into who are our educators, why are they teaching things this way, where are they getting their source material from, on and on and on. So that was some of the methods that we saw coming out, and probably the most controversial out of all that was the tone and tenor at our school board meetings. We saw that happen in a nationwide sweep. Obviously, we weren't exempt to that here in our state of Indiana. Many issues have been documented, videos of school board meetings, meltdowns on both sides by parents and school board members and other school personnel. And so, you had this kind of weird mixture of all of those things. And then, of course, through all of that, the school boards bore the brunt of that early. But then, as we've seen here recently, more school personnel have started to speak out. First, it came from the teachers, and that was a lot of it done through social media. It seemed like there were a number of various different accounts online through social media where they were documenting teachers who were taking to social media to kind of push back and say, it doesn't really matter what you do, parents. We're the experts. We know what we're doing. You don't know. Leave it to us. Trust us. That was maybe some of the more moderate voices, to the more extremist voices that were saying, it doesn't matter what you do. That we start hearing our children, I'm going to do this, and some real dangerous ideology. That kind of one stem or branch of that, I think, has been obviously the battle and debate over materials in media centers. That really has kind of been the battlefield, so to speak, between educators speaking out about materials that kids can get access to through libraries at school, and that blends into the school board meeting thing. So a lot of different moving parts to all of this. And so as things kind of blew up and then calmed down for a while, once it felt like schools got into session in August and September, then things maybe started to flare up again, because alongside with that, many states started their legislative sessions. And again, Indiana, I know is one here, our state, that was the case. And there was a move, I think, by concerned parent groups to align with state legislatures to attempt to try to create pieces of legislation or influence the adoption, sponsorship, writing of various different pieces of legislation that would push back against this. Because and I don't know this for certain because I'm not privy to the agendas of these groups, but my gut instinct tells me, hey, we tried to go it the school board route and it didn't work. We weren't listened to. We were shouted down. We were shut out. You had school boards that were changing school board meeting times. They were shutting out public comment. They were, doing all sorts of things to silence the voices of parents who, even if they were coming across as concerned, muted voices, they just were overwhelmed by the response from community members about what was going on inside school. So it was like, okay, we can't deal with this, so let's just try to shut it down. And so those concerned parent groups, which, by the way, I do want to mention this as well. There was a lot of discussion about this with some groups, very radical people, I think, but I do want to make sure, guys, these concerned parent groups, they're not funded by dark money. These aren't cook organizations. These aren't alt-right groups. These aren't radical right-wing, alt-right, whatever language is being thrown around out there. These are legitimately concerned parents. Are there knuckleheads who are going too far and trying to incite violence or using rhetoric that probably isn't appropriate. Yeah, I'm sure that's in every organization. You can't control all that. You're never going to be able to eliminate that. But I genuinely truly feel, having worked directly with a lot of these people, these are legitimately just concerned parents. They're concerned about what their children's experience is in education. Likewise, I think that there are a lot of teachers, educators, who probably understand and know that what is going on is not right. Some of them are speaking up, some aren't. I don't dare ever want to say that if you were to go online and see like libs of TikTok or just these wacky, crazy, kooky teachers who are out there, and some of them have already been fired or disciplined for the things that they've said via social media accounts, that they don't wholly represent the voice of teachers, right? So we've got to stop with taking the extremes from groups and blanket statement that's how all people within that group are, and throwing labels around on things, because it just completely derails any opportunity for dialogue that may happen. So anyway, that's one thing I want to make sure that I mentioned here before we got too far off into this. But back to the point I was trying to make here is that these concerned parent groups tried to go the school board route, didn't get anywhere, got shut down, literally and figuratively. And so, you kind of go back to the drawing board and you say, well, we're certainly not just going to say like, oh, well, we tried, too bad, so sad. Guess this is going to how it's going to be. So I guess maybe I do understand to a degree the move to want to align with legislative leaders. They are representatives. They are duly elected people, and this is their purpose, right? And we hear this all the time about, this is the way that our representative democracy works. But as the title of this video is labeled, I feel like this is a fool's errand. I feel like it is a waste of time and energy and talent to go this route, to try to look to a legislative answer for what is going on in our schools. And let me kind of break that down a little bit. So the first part to that is, and I want to make this very clear because I think this is more fundamental to the second thing, which I think is more kind of a secondary thing that relates to going the legislative route. The first thing is from a politics perspective. Politics, politics, as everybody knows, right? I mean, that's one of the topics that you avoid bringing up at dinner with family. Politics has this kind of dirty word, it's got this like, weird vibe to it these days. But in all seriousness, reality, the old mantra that all politics is local, right? Which, I think is one of those things where we think about what is it that we're trying to accomplish? If we're going the state legislature route and we're trying to get laws passed the state house, how effective is that going to be, right? Whether you're at a school in Allen County or in Clark County or in Lake County, Marion County, one of the suburbs, it doesn't matter, right? Are you going to be able to create a piece of legislation that is going to effectively be able to create or generate the goals that you want to get in all of the counties here in the state of Indiana? Now, that's the first kind of thing you have to ask yourself. And I think if you're being realistic, you say, no, it's not, because every one of those school districts throughout the state have different sets of circumstances, have different ways that they're doing things, in some ways similar, in some ways different. The school, the student body is different. The needs of the students within those districts are different. And so that's the first thing, right? Is that, you go that political route and you're trying to come up with a one size fits all band-aid or answer to this. And it's just not going to work, right? In addition to that, a political solution is just not feasible. When you think about what does it take to enforce legislation, you're talking about increased money. You're talking about changing the rules of the game. Teachers had some very valid concerns about the language of the bills that were being presented, HB 1134 and SB what was it, 167? I forget what the number was on it. But when I read through the language of that, there's some valid concerns there about that. Not to say that there aren't concerns about the way things are being done, but again, to try to take this, and you've seen this already, like some of these legislators are having to backpedal on statements that have been made because they realize how improper, I guess might be the word, or again, just, it's not feasible to be able to do these things. And again, so that's the thing that I think is really important for us to consider and think about is when we're looking at solutions, there's two things there. Number one, the political solution is not feasible. It's not viable. It's not going to create the results that ultimately we're looking to. It may feel that way, but in the long run, you're going to find that that's not the case. And second, it's not going to be able to create the solutions for the diversity of people, even within a state like Indiana, that it's going to need to. And what we should be doing, in my opinion, is we should be letting the market, letting us, and again, you might say, well, but the game is rigged. The market can't truly, fully on its own decide whether or not families within these school districts remain within the school districts, right? So, in other words, what I mean by that is, if your school district continues to roll out social emotional learning curriculum, critical race theory curriculum, strict mandates on mask policies and quarantines and things of that nature, that your ultimate voice in that is you vote with your feet. And at some point, it will resonate enough with you where you will say, that's my breaking point. I'm no longer in on that. The moment that you do that, that's the tipping point, right? So every moment that you complain about what the school is doing, and you're trying to create change, because I'm not necessarily saying that we shouldn't work to ever try to create change, but the moment where your voice is no longer heard, right? And you are no longer satisfied with the conditions that your child or children are experiencing in the schools, then you vote with your feet. You withdraw your son or daughter. And you might say, yeah, but man, I can't do that. We can't homeschool. We can't do private school. There are no charter schools in my area. I'm out of options. I don't know what to do. you know, what we say all the time when talking about letting the market decide is you got to make choices, right? There are opportunity costs. There are going to be risks involved. There are going to be changes that are going to have to be made if it means that much to you. Every minute that you continue to leave your kid in a school and yet complain about how bad that school is, what you're saying to the market is it's not that bad because I haven't been motivated to make a change, right? It's like, think about it this way. We always use these analogies in talking about education. And one of the more popular ones that gets used is, you think about shopping at a grocery store, right? And if you continue to go to, let's say, your local Walmart store, right? And you grovel and you complain about how they never have any lanes open and the shelves aren't stocked and the customer service is atrocious and, on and on, you come up with these lists of things, but yet you continue to keep going back week after week, right? And what are you doing? You're giving them your money. You're communicating to the market that you're willing to tolerate and bear the conditions in exchange for whatever it is that you value as to why you continue to go back. So that could be prices, convenience, whatever it is. You going there and continuing to show your patronage to that business is a signal in the market that you value going there and exchanging your dollars for whatever the time that it is that you go to shop, the products that you can get, the ease, convenience, whatever. At some point, if you say, I've had enough, I'm going to Kroger, I'm going to Aldi, I'm going to Meijer, I'm going here. You've got those options. Maybe it means a longer drive. Maybe it means your bill is a little bit higher. Maybe it means that you got to spend more time getting acclimated where things are in the building. Maybe the customer service ends up being worse there, right? But you find some other reason why you want to shop at another location. But it's that moment where, And along the way, maybe you talk to management at Walmart and you try to see if you can get product stock better, or you complain about the customer service, or you try to do things to initiate that change. But at some point, right? My point is that there will be a tipping point. There has to be a point where you say, I can no longer tolerate this, right? So now bring that back into education. The only way that we're going to be agents of change with the way that this system is set up, and the game is rigged. The system is rigged. You're trying to take on an institution that's been in place for over 200 years, that has some of the most powerful unions in the United States on its side. These people are not going to let go of their stronghold. They're not going to let go of the quasi monopoly that they have. They're not going to wake up one day and go, you know what, parents are right. We've been doing this wrong. We need to reimagine the way that we are trying to educate our children. We want to propose a new system of education that will open up opportunities for children of all socioeconomic, all racial, all whatever group that you can put students into. We're going to try to create a system that can accommodate all of these groups of people, even if that means that we break up this quasi monopoly. That's not happening. That's a pipe dream. And that's hard for me to say because that's what I envision. That's what I want. If I were to have it my way, if you were to say, you're now the Secretary of Education, or you're in charge of mapping out, planning out what education looks like in this nation, that's essentially what I would advocate for. Completely tearing down this system of brick and mortar, completely tearing down a system of assigning children into schools by zip code, and making it extremely difficult through whatever systems are in place. And oftentimes that's like truancy laws, compulsory laws, things of that nature, and reimagining the way in which we take our children in communities all across this nation and we attempt to educate them. That's what I would advocate for. A open system. I always kind of, when I'm reading about people like Socrates and Plato and Aristotle, and I think back to those ancient civilizations, and I just see teachers, right? And anybody can be a teacher. We don't have to have licensing. We don't have to have people that say that they've spent 4 or 6 or 8 years in university classrooms, who are now all of a sudden some enlightened class to say, I possess the knowledge and wisdom to be able to educate children, that somebody who's been working for 30 years in a hospital, or 30 years as an engineer or an electrician or a mechanic or in retail sales or whatever, those are educators. They have wisdom, they have knowledge, they can impart. What they don't have is training in how to manage a classroom. Can we please be honest with ourselves for a minute on that? Those of you in education, right? You have to start being honest about that. Okay. So get off your high horse and quit trying to say like you're the gatekeeper of knowledge and that you have possess all of these skills and tools to be able to educate children that nobody else on this planet has, because by God, you went through a teacher training college. Get real. You've got to drop that. Okay. So what I would imagine is an open platform where children could enter into a number of different things, right? And of course, then the objectives start getting raised about, well, then this wouldn't happen and that wouldn't happen. And it's that whole, without the government organizing all this, how would it ever happen? Like, we don't ever have the knowledge, skills that we would possess as a society to figure it out, right? Because it has to come through the government. We hear this argument about roads and hospitals and all other services, welfare services, and things of that nature. No, society would never be able to figure that out. We need the government to do it for us, right? And so I get looked at as, pie in the sky, too idealistic, whatever. So I have to live with that. I get that. It's not going to happen. Okay. That doesn't mean that we can't work to try to influence and implement some of that into what we currently have. And, in a way, we've seen some little bits of movement that way, but they're never going to move the needle enough to let go of that vice that they have, right? So what we have to do is we have to be agents in the market. And if we are going to see any real serious change, any more movement towards breaking down at least that, kind of wall that they have built, we have to utilize as much as we can. And we can't take it for granted that we have the ability to be able to withdraw children from public schools if we aren't happy. If you're happy with public schools, fine, keep them there. Okay, do that. Keep them in the building as long as you want. But if you are truly unhappy with children having access to material that you think is inappropriate, if you're truly unhappy with the curriculum that your school district is adopting and using, if you're truly unhappy with the teachers and the quality of teachers in your district, if you're truly unhappy with your superintendent and leadership, and on it goes, at some point there has to be that thing that will be that tipping point that will say, okay, now I'm done with this, and I'm voting with my feet, and I'm withdrawing my children from this, and I'm going to pursue. It might mean I have to change career. It might mean I have to make sacrifices. It might mean that I have to do a number of different things. But then and only then will you get their attention. Okay. Going this legislative route, it's just going to create more division. It's going to be again a red herring, whatever you want to call it. It's just going to be a waste of time, and it's just going to continue to promote more division. And again, I really think that when you look at what will create the greatest amount of moving the needle in education, it's us taking, and by us, I mean collectively as families, us taking the bull by the horns and saying, the one thing that I still have control over is whether or not my child continues to go to this school. And that's the one thing, right? I think that we still have control over. So I would recommend putting more time and effort and energy into trying to affect things at a local level as much as you can, and don't get frustrated by school board policies and things of that nature. But at some point, if you feel like you can't be that agent of change that you need or want to be, start looking for alternatives. Start looking for, and if they don't exist, create them. That's where um, the greatest opportunities and alternatives have come from, is people just saying, this doesn't exist, so I'm going to create it, I'm going to make it happen. So use your time and energy and effort to be able to do that. I think is going to have the greatest amount of impact on what is going on, not going through this legislative avenue. So that's for what it's worth, kind of where my head is right now on this. And I've been doing a lot of reading, doing a lot of writing. I had an appearance on Mock and Rob show here locally the other day. It was brought up there, talked a little bit about it there as well. But I'm open for ideas and suggestion for pushback. If you feel like the legislative avenue is viable and is the way to go, sell me on it. Tell me why. Show me how. Where are the results? Show me why we should put our faith and trust in the politicians, and why we should look at creating legislation at a state level that will be effective in changing the course of the way that education is going here in our state and in our country. So, all right, that's it for today. Like I said, maybe try to get back into producing some videos here. Just kind of wanted to give you guys an update on where we are, what I've been up to, what I've been doing. So thank you guys again, always, for your support. Don't forget, I do have a podcast if you are interested in hearing more about different things related to social sciences. We host a weekly podcast called They Never Taught Me That, where we take on curriculum in schools and talk about how incomplete it is, and give a little bit deeper information on issues. You can find that through Apple, through Google Podcasts, on the Spreaker radio app. I have the Facebook group, They Never Taught Me That. Over there, you can communicate with us there as well. So thanks so much. Have a good Friday, a good weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.